Hey there, my name's Steve Joordens. I'm director of the Advanced Learning Technologies Lab at the University of Toronto. And well, I'm here to invite you to a party. It's kind of a geek party for people who are interested in enhancing education. You see some of the other institutions that are joining the party represented here below me. These are all institutions, or at least individuals within these institutions, who share a kind of common belief. And that belief is that we all wish we could do a better job at developing core transferable skills in our students. Things like critical thinking, creative thinking, communication skills, metacognitive awareness, that kind of thing. And what we've ultimately decided to do is test one proposed approach for doing this, a very specific educational process that's facilitated by technology. So my lab is kind of overseeing this party, I guess. We are the party planners, and trying to keep everybody connected because, as you see, it's a lot of different institutions. In fact, it's 5 different countries and over 50 institutions that are involved so far, and we want more. We would love you to be part of it. And so what I want to do very quickly in this video, I'm going to try to be very efficient, but I also have to give you a sense of the process, the idea, and what we would require from you and what we would give to you if you're interested in participating. So I'm just going to jump in. All right. So we're interested in assessing the potential of technology-enabled peer assessment, and specifically a very specific use of that technology to both develop these skills that we value, but also critically to measure them. So I'm going to tell you first about the development part, and then we'll get to the measurement part, okay? So the specific technology we're going to use is called Peer Scholar. The process we described could work in any peer assessment technology. This is just one we created in my lab, and therefore we can share and support, etc. And so it's a great research tool as well. The way a Peer Scholar activity works, I just want to give you the sense of how this develops these skills. It's got 3 steps. The first step just involves you asking students to do something, and it could be some sort of assignment you already use. But really anything that challenges them to ultimately produce some sort of composition in reaction to a query you give them. And the assumption is that this composition will be related to the skills in question. So maybe you're going to ask them to do a critical analysis, maybe you're going to ask them to be creative, maybe you just want them to communicate something clearly, anything like that. Okay, that's step 1. They all submit a composition. The interesting things happen in step 2 and 3. Step 2, they log in and they see a set of compositions submitted by their peers. They're anonymously presented. They're randomly selected from the class. In my case, just to be concrete, I let them see 6 of these peer compositions. But not only do they see them, they are expected to assess them. Now, you can very specifically lay out how you want them to assess them, what questions you want them to answer, and we have a set of tools that allow you to do that. For this research project, there will be 2 parts that will be critical to their assessment. One is the application of a rubric. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. And the other is the notion that they should be giving each of their peers some constructive feedback. That's a big part of what they're learning, is how to give good constructive feedback. So quite specifically, I prefer a wording like the following. I will say, okay, look at each of your peers' compositions. Think of all the ways they could be improved. Then zoom in on that one thing that if this person fixed, you think that would maximally improve the quality of their work. Okay, so once you've figured out what that one thing is, now explain that thing to the peer and give them some idea of how you think they could go about fixing it. All right, so let's just think about what's going on here. Students are going peer by peer, and as they do, they're expected to do some critical analysis to figure out all the things that are wrong and eventually that one major thing, some creative thinking about how that could be fixed, and then ultimately they have to communicate all this to the peer in hopefully an effective way with the right tone and some useful information. So they're engaging critical thinking, creative thinking, communication, and they do that for peer 1, and then they do it again for peer 2, and they do it again for peer 3, etc. In my case, they do it for 6 peers. What this is giving them is repeated, structured practice, just like you'd give a basketball player who wants to develop his skills, or a soccer player, or a guitar player. Everybody needs this repeated, structured practice using the skill, and that's how it gets better. And so they're getting that. They're not just getting that, though. They are also seeing the work of their peers. And it amazes me now that we don't allow students to see peer work more, because it gives them a real clear sense of where their work fits, right? And when they see work that's better than theirs, it gives them an example of how their work could be improved. So in addition to all this work with critical thinking and creative thinking and communication, they're also getting a really strong metacognitive signal about how strong their own work is. Okay, so that's the second phase, and the second phase is it's about them giving feedback. In the third phase, they're seeing the feedback that the peers gave to their work. So while they were assessing 6 peers were assessing them. So in the third phase now, they see these 6 pieces of feedback, and we ask them to do a few things. The first thing we ask them to do is to rate, to assess that feedback. When I do that, I usually ask them to assess 2 things. How useful is it? Is there something in there that you think can help you get better? And how is the tone? Is the tone, emotional tone of the feedback, the sort that makes you want to learn from it? Or does it put you off in some way? So it's just teaching them how to consume feedback, all right? So they start by assessing all the feedback. And keep in mind, this is people telling them how their work could be better. So they're learning a lot about their work as they go through. But again, for each piece of feedback, they have to think about it critically. They have to think creatively whether their work would actually be better if they did this. And then, they respond to the peer about that. And then they do that for peer 2. And they do that for peer 3. And they do that for peer 4. Repeated, structured practice with these skills, this time in a receptive communication context, in a learning from feedback context. At the very end, after they've assessed all that work, we then give them a chance to formatively make their work better, to revise their work for final submission. Okay? So here's an important point I want to emphasize to you as an instructor. You gave them that original challenge, but then all of this learning that I described in the next 2 phases, they're completely student driven. You don't really have to do anything during these steps, and yet they are having a very deep, rich, powerful learning experience, getting repeated, structured practice with the most critical skills. This is what develops these skills, and in fact, we've got a lot of research showing that. If you go to the website vision.peerscholar.com, you can get access to a lot of that research that actually shows this process works. Okay, so that's step 1, a process to develop the skills. But of course, measurement is critical. For anything to really gain traction in an educational environment, we need some metric, some measure of, in this case, these skills and how they're developing. How can we get that? Well, this is the really exciting part, I think, because there's a way to get the measurement while also upping the pedagogical power of what's going on. And that is through the use of these validated rubrics. So the Association for American Colleges and Universities has produced a set of these so-called value rubrics. They are connected to these specific transferable skills. So here's the critical thinking one, but they have a creative thinking one, they have a communication one, they have an oral presentation one. They have like about 20 of these rubrics that they have developed and validated. And so the idea now is this: while the students are assessing their peers, part of that assessment involves them applying a rubric. So essentially we're saying to them, look at each peer's work and gauge how much critical thinking that peer is demonstrating. And the way you're going to gauge that is by applying this rubric to their work and ultimately giving them a rubric-based score. And then they do that again for the second peer, third peer, etc. Now, why is this cool? Well, if you think of me as a student now, I'm going to have 6 fellow students apply a rubric, in this case perhaps critical thinking rubric, to my work. and giving me a score. I can average those scores and have an average peer-based critical thinking score. In the first part of this study, and I'm going to share the results of the report with you, we have shown that those scores are valid, that they are sensitive to the amount of critical thinking that's present. And so we can now get the scores in the course of a regular assignment. We don't have to do anything extra to quantify a student's critical thinking abilities. What's maybe more exciting, in my opinion, is that this process itself of applying the rubric to a piece of work is a very valuable and powerful educational experience for students in and of itself. We can ask them, produce things that show critical thinking, but one way to really help them do that is to tell them to look at other people's work and look for critical thinking. In music, we call this developing an ear. So you don't just play your instrument all the time. You listen to other people and you learn from other people. You look for the quality musicianship, and when you see it, you see what it looks like. And so this applying the rubric is sort of training their ear for critical thought, or creative thought, or whichever rubric is valuable for your situation. Okay, so the point here is this isn't just a means to an end. Yes, we get the measure, but we also up the educational game even more through this principled use of rubrics within a peer assessment context. Okay, so that's the research project, in a sense, is asking as many of my colleagues as possible to join with me and do this with their class. Specifically, here's what we ask. If you would like to be part of this research, we will provide you with Peer Scholar and all the support you need to use it. What we would like you to do is take one of your activities, and we're thinking winter 2019 term here, take one of your activities or your assignments and provide it within Peer Scholar and ask students to go through that process I outlined. And while they do so, pick the value rubric that most corresponds to your assignment. So if you're asking people to be creative, use the creative thinking one. If you're asking them to do a critical analysis, use critical thinking. Oral presentation, use the oral presentation one, etc. Whichever value rubric fits your activity, use that and have students apply that to the work of their peers. That's the major thing that we need you to do. Now, another thing though, and this is mostly our problem, but we do need your help to do this. Because we're doing this with so many institutions, and because there are really only 4 of us on our side of the party, on our side of the project, providing all the support, we would really appreciate the possibility of integrating Peer Scholar with your learning management system. That gets rid of a lot of the logistics of setting up classes and inviting students and students signing up, etc. If it's all integrated with the learning management system, it works really smoothly. And so that just really reduces support demands extremely. So all we really need here, though, is for you to introduce us to whoever manages your learning management system and just say, hey, I'd like to be part of this study. And we can largely take it from there, but it's an easy process because Peer Scholar is what's called LTI2. That just means it integrates really easily with learning management systems, like as in 10 minutes, and it's integrated, maybe another 20 minutes to test it. So it's easy to do. Now, the people who run your LMS are going to want to make sure we've thought about security, accessibility, and privacy, and we have. So we have all the documentation they want at a place called docs.peerscholar.com, but they'll want to vet that, which is absolutely reasonable. But there should be no issues. And it should be easy, and it makes everybody's life a little easier. We may also, by the way, want to secure institutional ethics at your institution. We have ethics for the project. It kind of covers everybody's institution, but it would still be nice to secure ethics at yours, just respectfully almost of your institution. So we can take care of all that again as well. We can fill out the necessary forms. We just need you to help us in terms of being a name on that form, an institutional name. Okay, so that's what we're asking of you if you want to participate. What are we offering you? Well, because we know it takes a little bit of time to integrate and such, what we're basically saying is if you join the project, your entire institution can use Peer Scholar freely, and we will support them as well. We think it's a really powerful process. We'd like to see people using it. I'd love to see it spread. So you can imagine this is just sort of a free beta if your university wants to try it. Not a free beta. It's not really a beta because it's not in beta, but a free pilot, let's say, gives your university a chance, or anybody there a chance, to kick the tires of this technology, see what they think. And again, we'll support it for free, so as widely as they want to use it. We will also highlight your participation in an ultimate research report, and we'll send you a sparkling Pure Scholar t-shirt. How's that? So if all of that sounds interesting to you, I'm sorry, it took me a while to say everything I wanted to say, but that's just how it goes sometimes. If you want to participate, a couple of ways. There is through our website, altlab.ca. You can follow the Participate in Research link, and you'll find a Google form you can fill out there. Or you can just email me, jordens@utsc.utoronto.ca, and I will be in touch and take it from there. Okay, so thank you very much. That's what I got for you. I appreciate your time, and I will stop talking now. Okay, bye-bye.